opportunities to join different parts of the ecosystem is kind of infinite. You know, my to-do list is growing way faster than it's reducing. Or I have about 5 ideas a day to tweak it, to improve, and it's still in its infancy in many ways. So yeah,
it's really good though.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I think we get the, you know, without solid knowledge about the state of the facilities on a global scale, you know, we
go nowhere.
You know, yeah, we don't know what's going on, and it's know your numbers. You know, it's that old what you can measure, you can manage. So that for me is the underpinning the whole thing. No courts, no players. End of story.
Do you have anything, Ross, on clubs that are shut that still exist? There are some in Australia. There's some in England.
As in, do I have any data on that?
Yeah.
Not that I've teased out. I mean, I know I had a suggestion about people were about putting a date, like when the court was built, just to get a sense of age. Yeah. I mean, I'm having people, you know, we know that the data needs cleaning up, which is why it's a crowdsourced effort, so that I'm getting, you know, people, and I'm encouraging people to flag things which are deleted, which anyone can do anywhere on the planet about any other venue on the planet, and say, no, that's actually closed by now, and then we'll, you know, validate it. But in terms, so when they say, oh, this place is closed, now I don't know whether it's been closed for 5 minutes or 5 years. All I know is that it's been closed. So yeah, that's as best as I can do right now.
I mean, there are some clubs which are closed, but the courts are still there. They're very interesting to me personally.
Right. Yeah, I don't have any insight into that. I mean, we're in this sort of wide open stage where anyone who can see opportunities for me to tweak the information and encourage people to contribute to filling in the blanks, we're absolutely all ears.
Right. There's in Iceland, there's some in the army barracks there. There's a couple of courts. They're in Africa. They're all over the place. In Zimbabwe, in these countries, and they just need some TLC to get some courts back.
Yeah, some exposure. I mean, you know, as you would have read, we're surfacing some sites which don't even exist on Google Maps.
Yeah.
So that and you know, we make it a prerequisite that unless it's on Google Maps, we don't add it to our system, or we can't add it to our system. But you know, so why would you not want to be on Google Maps unless you're some sort of top secret military base?
Well, some of them are like in Africa, and I reckon there must be about 200 courts at least. So they're in schools. Some I've seen with chickens on them. So,
yeah, sure.
All sorts of things in old restaurants. No, serious. And all it needs is someone to, well, WSF or whatever, to go in there and get those courts going. They're school children. When I've been to Africa, the kids just give them a stick and a ball and they love you. So if you give them a squash board, take care of them, they'll be all over you, you know. So big potential there. We're going to go back to maximizing revenues. So we're going to help Neil to give some ideas to Neil. How are we going to increase his revenues off peak? So Connie, you can go first. You've got 2 minutes, Connie.
Okay. Give me like a 10-second warning. Okay, so Neil, did I understand you to say that you don't have a lot of girls at your club?
Oh, we have more coaches, lady coaches, than we have lady players.
And that's 2.
3.
Sorry about that. Yeah. Okay, so you know, we can spend a long time talking about how to improve that, and Connor and I are working on a separate call to explore that in detail and to come up with protocols and models which we hope will work, and happy to share that with you. You have the 3 ladies in place already. I think that mentors for the girls is everything, but even the little things. I mean, do you have glass back? Are all your courts glass back, for example?
No, we've got four conventional. Well, when I say conventional, I think we're the only. Yeah, we've got 1 glass back, which will be ready tomorrow. The other 4 are solid brick back with
so
glass.
This is a good thing, because women, when they start, don't want to play on a court with a glass back. It's also the phraseology. It's the way that you discuss it. You don't want to talk about exercise. You don't want to talk about the fact that you're fat and you want to get thinner. You don't want to, you know, it has to be fun and social, but a lot more about that. And we can talk about that at another point. The hours for squash predominantly used at our club are in the morning from 6 till 8, at lunchtime from 12 to 1:30, and then from 5 through to say 8 p.m. It used to be that they were used until 10, but you know, a lot of people are sort of leaving earlier. So how do we utilize the other hours? I'm a big proponent of Squash 57. I think that as squash motivators and squash entrepreneurs, we need to ensure that spaces are being used. I'm not like a purist in that, oh my God, you know, they use racquetball rackets. I could never do that. Forget it. I've got to make money. I've got to pay the rent or else the club gets closed down. Squash 57, as they say, it's like an entry sport and an exit sport. You can use it so that you can get a little fitter to be able to play squash. It's an exit sport when you're like me and you've just had a knee replacement. Well, I think I'll be playing Squash 57 moving forward. But it's a game that you can promote as being more social. It's predominantly a doubles game like pickleball, which has really taken off here. You need to get kids in early. So we need to go after the 4 to 7 year old age group. And you might be thinking, oh my gosh, how are they even going to hit the ball? Start with balloons. You know, it's like a party. It's like you're coming and having a little party with the kids. Am I 2 minutes up, Connor? Just tell me.
10 seconds.
And you want to be doing, you know, the over 55 group, as I said, as I think Brian commented on earlier, and focusing on ladies and ladies fitness. So there's many opportunities to help improve use of off-peak times.
I mostly always agree with what you say, Connie. So I can't say that. But for Neil, I would suggest that you put, when I go into a squash club, all I see is men's training, photos of Barrington, photos of male models or whatever. If you think about putting up photos and information about women's squash, I'm sure you'll get lots of more women's squash players and girls play. If you just keep your notice board saying men's training, men's team, you're not going to get more women. That's my opinion. Or you're going to be lucky. You're going to be lucky. Or because you've got female coaches.
Can I ask you, Neil, how many juniors have you got?
That's a bit of a not many, because we had like probably 12 to 20 depending on the sessions on a Saturday morning. So we had, since taking over at the end of 2018, 2019 was going pretty good. We've got lots of things set up. We've got some women's groups in. The juniors was moving nicely. So we were just moving from a stagnant sort of old-fashioned type, a bit horrible, I thought. So it you know, the movement was there, and we'd got with Tanya Bailey setting up some coaching for ladies to do their level 1 courses. So that was all planned. And then it all went wrong. So the plans were sort of there. We'd got pictures. We had got the things that you're talking about, but it's just, you know, so I've got some ideas, and Taylor's one of the other lady coaches, she's going sort of, you know, so we're planning to try and get it all moving. Yeah, so it's...
Well, the reason I ask about juniors is that for every junior, you've got a mother. And for every mother, that's a potential lady player. So I've had great success in the past in talking to the mothers when the kids are on court, and you hear them say, oh, yeah, maybe you could try a bit of this, or do, you know, hit the ball, get your racket up, whatever. And you just go up there and gently talk to them and say, well, why don't you give it a go? And if you start introducing that to 2, 3 or 4 different mothers at the same time, they will start to do it. And then you can perhaps have a mixed juniors and mothers session going on. Or one of my big successes, one of the mothers come to me and said, can we run a family night? And I said, brilliant, what do you want? And once a month, we used to run a family night where kids and families only could turn up. So the male members that generally dominate the courts were not allowed unless they brought their families. And it was a rule that whoever asked you to play, and we had a board system to do that, you had to play them. So, of course, being the coach, you constantly had sort of 7-year-olds coming up and saying, oh, can you give us a go? Or a dad would come up and say, oh, I'm going to give you a thrashing tonight. And it was done in a fun way. And the mums then started bringing some food in because there was no facilities at the club apart from a bar. So the parents would run for about an hour. and then they'd all repair to the bar and start drinking the bar dry, which was brilliant because the kids then got on the court and started enjoying it. But it's that relaxed atmosphere where everybody was on the same footing, you know. And if somebody, some of the old guys turned up one day, and one of the parents just turned around and told them to go away, not quite as politely as that, I have to say, and they couldn't understand it, and they said it's a family night.
That's great.
And it works because all of a sudden the whole family can go out on a Friday night or a Saturday night, whatever night you choose, and have fun together. So it's
sorry, Brian. This is what
I
Connie
mean,
and I was.
sorry,
go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to say that, you know, from a family perspective, that's such a safe environment, isn't it? You're not going out of the club. You're in that safe environment, aren't you? From a parent's perspective, can't be any better, can it?
No. And the parents suddenly find an interest, and of course, once the parents get an interest, they join the club.
Correct.
And then they'll bring in brothers, sisters, aunties, uncles. You know, I've had quite a lot of success in one of my clubs. You say about racquetball, Connie. I run a racquetball session where the average age is over 70.
Awesome.
Yeah, perfect.
One guy there is 82. And we introduced walking racquetball because they couldn't run. So we made a rule that nobody was allowed to run. And 2 bouncies were allowed.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
and then we had a guy that could play normally and a guy that could play with 2 bouncies. Who do you think won it? The guy with 2 bouncies won it every time.
Exactly. It's like a handicap. Yeah.
Worked out how to play. But everybody, you know, it's not being, I don't know what the word is, strict. It's about thinking on your feet and having fun. And if somebody can't serve, so what? Make short serves applicable.
Yeah.
That applies especially to juniors. You know, if they can serve too hard, then only allow them to win 3 points before the serve has to change hands with no loss of point. So then they lose that advantage all the time. I think it's, Connie's come across this and said it, and you have, Neil, in conversations we've had, and I know Connor does it. It's about being flexible.
Yeah. No, it's about everyone wants to play. So I serve, if I have kids playing and they can't serve, the other kid serves for them.
Yeah.
I don't care. Otherwise, there's no game for anybody because they can actually rally. They just can't serve. So, yeah. But we were talking about this the other day. So you've got this brilliant program. You've got juniors coming in. You've got parents coming in. I've got all the parents on a WhatsApp group. So I send them videos of what the kids are doing. So they see what I'm doing. And Connie, I think you liked, particularly like those cakes I showed. I did a ski camp and I want to have that time with parents at the end of the ski camp for them to be communicating with each other. And they see me as a nice guy because I bought these lovely cakes and the kids are saying what a great time they had. I don't think we're doing enough of that sort of stuff, the follow up. And that's what will keep the clients and bring new clients. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I think they're all good ideas, fantastic ideas. Yeah. You know, it's you know, as you've all said, it's getting that area that's, you know, the time of the day that's not that busy. I mean, there's a great example in Sheffield, Hallamshire. You know, is pretty much busy all day with racquetball, and then at 6 o'clock it turns into squash. So they have it literally going from about 10 in the morning until 6. They have racquetball leagues going. You know, every you know, obviously it's supported by quite a big city. You know, it's on the edge of quite a big city, but you know, we can all take something from that, can't we?
Absolutely. I'd like to make 2 comments about mums. The first one is I've had great success with telling mums that they should do 1 or 2 or 5 lessons, whatever it may be, because then they can talk to their child on an equal level. So kids generally think mums are pretty stupid. And if the child, regardless of how long they've been playing, if the mum says, you know, it looks to me like you're not watching the ball, or why don't you hit the ball away from whoever you're playing, the kid turns around and says, Mum, you know, you don't know what you're talking about. So I say to the mums, I want you to do at least 2 or 3 or 4 lessons, because then you can say to your child, I find if I hit the ball away from myself when I'm playing, that I can win the point. and then you're on the same playing level as the child, and they're more likely to believe what they're saying. And the mums really like that. That is extremely effective. Needless to say, some of those mums continue playing in the women's group. The second point that I'd like to make is that when you give a child a lesson or a clinic and the child leaves, the first thing the mum says when the child gets into the car is, "What did you learn today?" And the kid says, "I don't know," or something to that effect. So we've had great responses and feedback from parents when at the beginning of the lesson, we say what it is we're trying to achieve. And this can be done in a formal manner or an informal manner, depending on the level of the child and so on. But informally, you might just say, okay, today we're going to work on our backhand and I want everyone's backhands to improve. At the end of the lesson, we will say, okay, do you feel like your backhand has improved? And that's the thought the child leaves with, so that when the child gets in the car and the mum says, what did you do today? They'll say, oh, I worked on my backhand and it really improved. But that's just because the last thought that he had. And I find that can then lead into a discussion with the parent, where the parent's happy, more happy and more involved because their child seems to be more interested in what you're talking about. Because a lesson is not an entity into itself. It's a stepping stone to many other things. So when a child does a lesson with me, I'm thinking and manipulating, if you like, the process, so that I want the child to sign up for summer camp. I want the kid to get a new racket. I want the kid to do some clinics, to sign up for a tournament in two months' time. And I will set goals on that basis. So I will say to the child who's come in for one lesson, okay, we do one lesson. I'll say, okay, I think you could do a tournament in 2 months, but if you want to do that, we've got to achieve certain things between that time. You would need to improve your serve and you need to improve your forehand. Now, we could do that. It'll probably take me 2 or 3 lessons, but let's set a time frame to have some success achieved in 8 weeks so that you can do the tournament. Everything has to have a goal. Everything has to have something you're leading forward to. In my opinion, coaches that just do a lesson, the kid comes in, you do a lesson and leave, this is a completed wasted opportunity. You have to be a salesperson, but you have to be the salesperson in the nicest possible way. No one thinks I'm really manipulating them or cheating them or scamming them. I don't think so. But what they feel like is that I'm incredibly interested in their future and what they're going to do. And I think, in terms of coaches, I really cannot emphasize that enough.
I think you're right. I think it's the enthusiasm of the coach that comes over.
Mm-hmm.
And too many coaches just go on court, off court, on court, off court. They don't have any interaction. They don't go upstairs and talk to parents if the parents are there. They don't talk to the kids a lot. But what's nice that's come out of the people that are on here, excluding me, is that everybody's enthusiastic about it. Everybody wants to move it forward. Absolutely. There's lots of good ideas between all of us. This is what we need to grow.
Well, the target is the parent for me.
Yeah.
Because the kid might love the lesson if I have I've had kids who really fantastic 8-year-old Swedish kids does amazing things with the balls, and the parents put him into golf and tennis. Mm-hmm. The kid loved the squash. Now, to me, if I look back on that, I should have got the parents on court, even for a free lesson, to get them interested. That was a younger coach. The target is the parent. The kids will all love my squash lessons. They'll love Connie's squash lessons, Joe's, Brian's. They'll love our squash lessons. But we may fail because we don't have the interaction with the parent. That's what, to me, will make our success. With the parents paying, that's the main thing.
I think for the growth of squash, there's 2 areas. One, I think you're right, is parents. The other is in the UK is we've missed the 20 to 45-year-olds. There's been 2 generations now who really have never played squash probably, and they're the future because they've got the disposable income. They are going to be parents, one assumes, for the vast majority of them. So if we can get that group of people into the club and playing regularly, then we start to seal the future of the club rolled up within that. But that's obviously a long-term prospect. I'm now starting to coach the kids which will be the third generation. I've coached the grandparents, the parents, and I'm now coaching the children. If we can keep doing that, if all of us are doing that, then squash has got a definite future.
Connie and Joe and Ross, in your clubs, like what Brian is saying is pretty much right. In the clubs I coach in, there are pretty much nobody from 20 to 40. Is that the same in your clubs?
Yeah, I think we've missed out on. I agree entirely with Brian that we have had that that loss of a generation. Unfortunately, you know, I still believe it's a fantastic opportunity. It's not ruined by weather. It's a very easy startup. You can get playing in next to no time. I feel that, you know, the governing body, especially in the UK, has really failed to get that across. You know, they seem to be hell bent on, you know, Olympics will be everything. Yeah, Olympics will be great. It will be great. There's no doubt about it. But it doesn't want to. You don't want to be hanging on the Olympics, because we're in a cycle, and you know we won't get back to being back at the top of that cycle for maybe 12 years. You know, maybe the Olympics thing has gone completely, but we shouldn't be hanging on that Olympic thing. You know, we should be, you know, governing bodies should be proactive and saying, you know, this is a great sport. You know, you can choose squash or racquetball. We don't mind. I mean, I always believe that, you know, snooker and pool have quite a good similarity to squash and racquetball. You know, you go on a snooker table, it's quite difficult to play. Squash is a fairly difficult game to play, but you go on the smaller table or the bigger ball, it's actually a very, very similar thing, really. And we've got to engage those people to play one of those, you know, especially the 20 to 40-year-old.
So I remember when I was playing as a junior, there weren't 20 to 40-year-olds either.
No, you'll get back a long way though, Connor.
Yeah, not as far as you, Brian.
That's true.
a few years. No, but I remember there was stacks of juniors, but there wasn't. I think there are issues. How do we attract them? I think the multi-sport option. When we go into fitness clubs, seems to be no link with the person doing the fitness classes. You see them coming out in droves. And then clubs are asking them to pay to play squash. When you've got a captive audience, they just give them a two month free trial at squash. How do we interest that age group? How do we interest them? Because they're out partying, they discovered things, you know, beer and opposite sex, whatever, or the same sex, whatever, doesn't matter. But they've discovered things, and they're at university. They're having fun. So why would they come and see us, Brian? We're old fogies. Why would they come and see us? We're old fogies.
Well, interesting. You mentioned universities. I coach at the university down in Southampton, and it is a potential breeding ground. Unfortunately, in Southampton, at one time, I was fighting 93 sports that were on offer. But squash, because you get quite often universities, and I think this is the case in America, universities attract the top, or trying to attract the top squash players. So you have a group of really enthusiastic, really keen players, and kids find it a very good way of using it as a mixing and getting to know people. So they'll go on to the squash courts. And if you can engender those to go out and talk to all the other people that are in their tutor groups or whatever they are in universities, that is a good way of starting to get them through.
Are there any studies for other sports apart from football where this is a drop-off age for all sports?
It's a drop-off age for all sports. I think it's a fact.
Yeah, so I would agree.
What is it about our sport? Because I think it's a great sport. It takes 45 minutes. You get a great workout, even if you're not very good. So we're not marketing it properly for that.
Well, I think we're losing out to the electronic industry. You know, in my day, I started playing in the 70s. You know, we didn't have a lot of what's around today, obviously, and to get energy and enthusiasm going, we started to find things like badminton or tennis or squash. I hate football, so I won't mention that. But these days, the kids, they think they can play a game on a console.
Yeah.
And that's what we've got to break. That's the cycle we've got to break. And it is possible. It's just, it's maybe now it's through juniors, But we
I think the juniors will carry on playing, hopefully. I mean, the juniors I'm coaching, Connie's coaching, you guys are coaching. They love the sport. We've indoctrinated that. They'll keep playing. It's just that when I take anyone who's like 25 or the young guy who was up and coming junior to the club, and he walks into the club and it looks like an old people's home, he's not interested, to be honest.
Yeah,
without being rude.
Yeah, you've got to get some good-looking girls in there to attract the boys.
Yeah.
But, the problem
contentious.
The problem in the US, of course, is that the kids are vying to get into the top colleges. So it's somewhat mythical now. So I'm in a very wealthy area, and I probably have 200 juniors playing. And of those 200 juniors, 100 of them think that they're going to get into a better college because of squash. How many actually will? I would say maybe 15 or 20 or what have you. But the draw card from the Ivy League is so strong. It's not that they give scholarships, because they largely don't. But in the US, once you've gone to an Ivy League school, it's essentially set you up for life. I mean, it cannot be overstated. My daughter played #1 in an Ivy League school all 4 years, and we'll be traveling anywhere. We were in Porto a year ago, and she usually has something of her college on her, like a bag or a keychain or something with it. And people will come up to her and say, I'm a Dartmouth, 85 or whatever. She's a Dartmouth 17, which means that that's the year she graduated. And they will, besides the fact that she's absolutely beautiful and 6 foot tall, they will come up to her and just say to her, can I do anything for you? Here's my business card. And without a doubt, if a manager is interviewing for a position and he's a Dartmouth person and a Dartmouth alum, and he's got 4 students in front of them and they are all equal, if one of them is Dartmouth, he will choose that person. And so the draw of the Ivy League schools to set yourself up for life, regardless of costs, because they're obviously very expensive. We pay $60,000 a year or something like that for our kids to go to college, is you think it doesn't matter because it sets them up for life. Now, there's a lot of parents who believe their children are going to get into these colleges and they're just crazy because the kids are like no good. The kids can't hit the ball and they still think that they're going to be like top 100 in the world. And there's a lot of unethical coaches who will promote that. At my club, we don't. At my club, we're more cerebral, if you like. My husband's a PhD. One of my coaches is a PhD. I'm a master's in psychology. So we are more, the thinking man squash players, if you like. And so we would never, lie to a student about what we think they could succeed. But I must say in the DC area and probably in the US, 90% of coaches will. And parents are stupid enough to fall for that for quite a while before they eventually make their way back to us and say, well, that wasn't true what they said. So it's a little bit of a different structure than the English structure or the Australian structure. In Australia, of course, you played, you had fun, you exercised, you enjoyed playing with your friends. There was no college program except a drinking program at the University of Queensland, where I attended, but it wasn't even serious squash. And then if you were really good enough, then you went and represented your state or your country or whatever it may be. But there was not this huge middle ground that the US offers. Now, unfortunately, there's a lot more international players coming in. So at the top, if you've got the top teams that may have 100 players between them, if you've got 50 or 60 of those that are international players, then there's less spots for the American students to go into, which is not good for the program that we're trying to promote. So they're very different, I think, models. And then what we do find is when they get into college, after college, they just stop. The kids just stop. I mean, that's why America is frankly useless at many sports, but squash in particular. I mean, how can there be, 2 or 3 or 4 Americans in the top 100 in the world, PSA players? It's very indicative that there's something wrong with the system.
And yet it's it's spoken about being an example. But so let's move on now. So we're going to say a lot of the clubs are not using coaches in their program. Connie, you used yours obviously, and they've gone on to do better things, not better things, great things themselves, which is a proof of what a person you are. What are the qualities that we can sell as coaches to clubs? I'll start with Joe.
Right. Our qualities as coaches.
Yeah.
I suppose approachable is one of them. Organised is another. So we have to, because we're looking at quite a wide spectrum. I mean, when I was at Squash Leicester, we had, we had England juniors, and then we had, 8th team players. So it's looking after that spectrum really. Yeah. So and that person that's in the 10th team, is paying for your time the same as the person who's nationally ranked. So exactly. You have to give them equal respect, I suppose. But it's it's about being I mean, I was going to tell you the story when I grew up. I was at Leicester Squash Club, and there was a coach there who frankly did nothing. He, in that day, we're talking about 1980s, he was about £20 an hour then. So if you equate it to today's money, it probably looks like £60 or so, which I suppose in the States they're paying that amount. It's way higher than what people were paying at the time. And he did very, very few lessons, was pretty useless from a club's perspective. He wasn't engaging people to play more squash. He wasn't getting people to come in. And when I was a kid, I didn't have a lot of money for lessons, and I approached him and said, what about this, what about that? And his answer was, at the end of the day, people are paying good money for that. Why should you have it for nothing? And I was like, well, it's a small, what would I do to get better at this? So what I've tried to do, especially in probably the last 5 years, is if people want to learn to play the game, instructional videos that are free to access, all those things. It shouldn't be, we should be trying to create a game for everybody, basically.
Brian, you've got about 1 minute, Brian.
Oh, sorry.
You've got about 1 minute.
What was the question? I was just thinking over what Joe said. What coaches have got to be enthusiastic, personable, flexible, understanding, and work with the individual, not work with the textbook. I think I see too many coaches going through the mechanics of, you've got to hold the racket this way, you've got to swing that way, you've got to put this foot down there. I think as coaches, we've got to look at the person and say, well, what are they capable of? And I think all coaches should actually have a go at coaching a disabled person. Sorry if the terms are non-PC. I don't know what the current PC terms are these days. My greatest achievement was working on court for 20 minutes with a young girl who had cerebral palsy. She was autistic and she had hearing and sight problems. And that 20 minutes taught me more than any other time in the last 40 odd years that I've been on a squash court. She had a great deal of time, but when she just literally just suddenly handed me the racket and said, thank you, and walked off. That was just her nature. And I knew that up front. I knew what it was all about. I knew what the parents were. And there was a bit of a challenge there because the parents said, she'll never hit a squash ball because she's never hit a ball in her life. Within 5 minutes, I got her hitting the ball.
That's beautiful.
Because I was working with her. And it was a case, you had to put the ball where the racket was. And she knew how to swing a racket. So all you had to do was time it right. And the parents were overjoyed. The girl was overjoyed. And I will never forget that day, ever. And that's humility, I suppose, is the other thing that you need.
Sorry, Brian.
Maybe more coaches have to be more pushy. They see it as being pushy. I don't think Connie and I see it as being pushy. It's like we're salespeople. So we are good at what we do. We do it well, and we get people involved in squash. So everyone who's a coach, they are providing a service like, I rang up GoDaddy to renew. They couldn't have been friendlier. The customer service is what we're actually providing, a service more than anything else. Bit different to others, but this is where a lot of us are lacking, and we have to up our game if we want to get squash back on track. We're just about to finish now, so I'm going to ask you all to do a little homework. I'm going to ask you each to write down there's probably about 8 types of clubs. Okay. So from a members club, from a council club, whatever, I want you to write down and PM me the different types of clubs that exist and which one you would be best suited to. Connie, you're in your own club, so. And what are you pushy enough, Connie? Though you don't have to answer that. The others, are you confident enough about your own what you're providing? Because I see so many coaches who like almost apologizing for charging, especially in England, where if I was in England, I'd be charging double the amount you guys are charging because I have to live. So, and I wouldn't live by the England squash rates for sure. So that's the homework. So write down the different types of clubs and which one you would be best suited in. Connie, not your own ones. You have to write what and we'll take it from there. So we'll do this again in maybe a couple of weeks. We have to speed it up a little bit because otherwise we'll be on all night. But thank you all for your time.
Guys, such a pleasure to put a face to names. Yep. Neil, contact me separately and we'll get that donation in place for you. But use it as a marketable, aspect that, if this woman from Australia who's living in the US who doesn't know you is happy to donate this because she believes in you and what your mission is, then people have to step up, use it as a marketing tool. Such a pleasure to talk to everybody.
Right. Thanks very much. I'll be in touch with everybody.
Thanks for organising.
I'd like to organise a little tour sooner or later, which I'll talk to you all about small PSA events in each of the clubs, which a challenge even to Ross.
Ross, just let me have a quick
plug your app.
At the camera on site. But,
so thank you everyone so much, and we'll be in touch. So don't forget, send me the different types of clubs there are.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Cheers, Connor. Cheers, everybody.
Take care.
We'll
Thanks. Bye. Nice to meet you. Bye. Bye, Ross.
Can you